Hello, and welcome to HHH, the podcast where we talk about those horrible humans in history. I am your host, Angela Pearson, and thank you guys so much for joining me. I do have a special guest in the recording studio today, and it's my cute little daughter. She's officially 2 months old. I know. You listened to my last episode. She was pretty brand new. It's been a minute since I recorded that one. But you know, we're slowly catching up. We're going to be slowly releasing new episodes. And hopefully once this little girl gets in a routine, we will release them way more frequently. But if you're just joining us on Horrible Humans in History, welcome. We are so glad you are here. If you have been listening from the beginning, I'm so glad you have stuck with me. I know it's been a little crazy the last little bit, but thank you so much for being here. Make sure you are liking and subscribing, and make sure you turn on notifications however you listen to the podcast, because it is so sporadic that we will be releasing these. You'll need those notifications. So sorry about that, but thank you so much for subscribing. And if you have any suggestions of people that you want to hear about on these podcasts, please let me know. You can either message me on social media. I'm on Facebook or Instagram, or you can just comment on these episodes and let me know what you would be interested in hearing about. So let me know about any future suggestions as well. But moving on, let's jump into this. Today, we are going to look at a real-life wolf in sheep's clothing. Her name is Gesche Gottfried. She was known as the Angel of Bremen because everyone loved her for her kindness. She was admired for all of her devotion and faithfulness to family members, and she was known for comforting the dying and was the biggest weeper at all the funerals. And people thought she was cursed because she had so many loved ones around her die. But it turns out that it wasn't actually fate causing this. It was arsenic. So this is the chilling tale of a woman who poisoned every single person close to her, one meal at a time. So let's begin where all stories start. Early in her life. Let's get into this. Gesche Marguerite Timm was born March 6, 1785 in Bremen, Germany. At the time, Bremen was actually a free city within the Holy Roman Empire, and it was a city of growing commerce, a lot of modest homes, and really deeply religious people. I mean, within the Holy Roman Empire, so they're going to be pretty religious. So the Gesche family was actually in the working class, and her father was a low-level tailor, and her mother was known to be very stern and emotionally distant, which I feel like is a common theme among the people that we talk about on this channel, but who am I to say? There isn't actually a lot of surviving details about Gesche's early years, but what we do know suggests that Gesche grew up under really strict discipline. Her mother reportedly only showed affection when it served a purpose, so her mother was very emotionally manipulative. But that pattern actually would later repeat in Gesche's own life. So it was a way of dealing with people that Gesche herself learned and assumed was normal based off of things we're going to talk about a little later. So as a child, Gesche was said to be pretty obedient. She was neat and very helpful. She was trained early in housework, which was pretty typical for girls and women at that time. But instead of doing that, she might have absorbed a little bit of a darker lesson about power, control, and How to Win Love by Serving Others. Again, emotionally manipulative. Her teenage years were pretty uneventful on the surface. She was quiet. She was a pretty attractive girl, so a lot of boys found her pretty attractive. But most importantly, she was very compliant. She never made a fuss, never broke the rules. She really had this intense pressure to be absolutely perfect and to be silent and to be good. And that might have warped her understanding of relationships a little bit. And you'll kind of see that as we talk about her later in life. But she just learned to really suppress, to serve, and basically to please everyone around her. So while she was a teenager, she attended the Klipschule. I don't know how they say that. Klipschule and the Ansguri Kerchiplush. Oh, gosh. I'm going to spell it for you, and if you can pronounce this, I will be impressed. It's ANSGARII dash KIRCHSPIELSHUL. Kirchbull. Anyways, we're going to move on to the rest of the story. She also participated in Lutheran religious education. So I'm guessing those two first things were schools. My notes. It's been a minute since I made these notes. I will tell you, I write my script and get all the notes ready, but then it usually takes a couple weeks to actually record, so I might not actually know what my notes are saying. So bear with me. Anyways, back to the story. So she participated in a Lutheran religious education around 1798. She was described as orderly, diligent, somewhat vain, and eager to learn. So during her teens, she actually took French lessons and dance lessons, which was not typical for girls from her social background. So she was really lucky that she got to do that. And her peers in those areas described her as attractive, ambitious, and even harbored some aspirations to become an actress or to perform on stage. So she kind of had a goal to become famous, you would say, because, like I said, she is a little vain. So she wanted people to see her and recognize her and to be the center of attention, which might come into play a little bit later. So one source suggested that by age 12, Gesche actually her formal schooling ended and she remained at home, handling most of the household chores and bookkeeping for her father. She was seen as really pious and charitable and deeply involved in caring for the needy, traits that would later mask her darker impulses. So even though she came across as very pious and charitable, we'll see how that actually gets twisted a little bit later in her life. So her talents for acting and charm were evident in her youth. She excelled in local plays and performances. Like I said, she was able to take dance lessons and stuff, but she also performed in these local plays, often having the leading roles and the admiration of the audience. Like I said, she really enjoyed being that center of attention and did whatever she could to have it. And it's probably a good thing that she was such a darn good actress and wanting to be the center of attention, because it turns out her whole life was just basically acting. So we'll go into this a little bit more, but literally this practice in plays and everything is setting her up to be a pretty good actress in her entire life, not just on the stage. So in 1806, at age 21, Gesche married John Miltenberg, who by trade was a saddler. This marriage elevated her socially, but she was actually very disappointed with this arrangement. Miltenberg led a dissolute life. He frequented taverns. He really loved the brothels. So as you can tell, any woman would be super happy to marry this man. And he eventually depleted all of the family's resources. And despite this, Geshe actually bore 5 children, though tragically only 3 of them survived into the mid-1810s. But the marriage was super duper rocky. So Johann, did I say John? It's Johann, actually. I think I said Johann. Guys, being a new mom, super sleep deprived, you're just gonna have to deal with this. I'm so sorry. But Johann was often away from the home working and everything. And this left Geshe alone a lot. And she was really overwhelmed with all the children. She was super unhappy and became very controlling. And the control just increased and increased. By outward appearances, she was the model wife, model mother. So anyone who saw her would just assume she was the best wife, best mother. But under all of that polished, primed image, she was unraveling pretty quickly. And soon people around her started dying off. So let's get into this. So her husband, Johann, suddenly died in October of 1813. She nursed him all through this mysterious illness, and they didn't know what it was. It just came on all of a sudden, and it was marked by vomiting, diarrhea, and slowly wasting away to basically nothing. And everyone around her praised Geshe for being such a wonderful wife and being so devoted and loving. But what she was hiding was she was actually the one making her husband so sick. She was the one poisoning him just enough to make him really sick up until the point that he actually died. But once she started killing, Geshe couldn't stop. So between 1815 and 1817, a very deadly pattern unfolded in her life. So her mother, 2 daughters, Johanna and Adelheid, her father, her son Heinrich, and 2 brothers all died in quick succession. All of those people, it was just one right after the other. And again, as they were, going through the throes of illness, she would sit by their side and act loving and devoted. And everyone saw her as just this kind-hearted, loving, devoted wife, mother, sister, and daughter. But she was slowly killing all of her loved ones. In July of 1817, Gesche's second husband, Michael Christoph Gottfried, passed away. And they think he was likely another poisoning victim. And these successive family deaths occurred during a time of cholera and other epidemics. So it was helping her actually hide the fact that she was the one killing them. Everyone just assumed that they were catching these illnesses and that's what was killing them. But her humanitarian image was just growing and growing. As she became the nurse to the sick, people actually gave her a nickname because they saw her as so kind and caring. Her nickname was Angel of Bremen from the community. So everyone believed that she was just this saint of a person. After a pause of several years, so she decided, I've killed enough people for now. Let's take a little break. In June of 1823, she killed her fiance. Man, these poor men, falling for the wrong lady. She killed her fiance, Paul Thomas Zimmerman, using quote-unquote mouse butter. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of mouse butter, but I have never heard of mouse butter. So what is mouse butter, you may ask? Like I said, no, it's not butter from mice. It sounds like it is. I've never heard of this, but it is a common arsenic-based rodenticide. Rodenticide? How do you say that? It's just basically like a pesticide for rodents. It's some kind of butter for rodents that they can munch on and eat. So that's what she was actually using to kill all her victims. Now, Zimmerman was a well-off Bremen resident who had really admired Gesche and made her the sole heir to his estate. After his death, she received ownership of his home and all of his possessions. This inheritance actually helped her maintain her reputation as a respectable and charitable widow, since she appeared to be financially secure without the need for obvious labor. So she was killing off these men for the money, for the moolah. Obviously, that's why they're always doing it. I don't know why she killed off her children. I don't know what benefit she got from that, except for maybe not having to pay for them. But majority of at least the adult victims, because she killed off her children, Gottfried stood to inherit something from each of them. So she actually waited till she was in their will where she would inherit something before she would kill them. And like I said, it makes no sense that she killed her children because she didn't benefit in any way from that. So other than, I guess, not having to take care of them anymore. But between 1825 and 1827, she committed a second wave of murders. So the victims, the first one in 1825 was Anna Lucia Mayheroles. Now, her relationship is to Gesche they were just really close friends. She was really wealthy and trusted Gesche, who often nursed her when she was ill. So she had a reputation of taking care of people. And when this friend, Anna, had been sick, Gesche took care of her. But she eventually decided to just poison her with her mouse butter. And she actually got some of Anna's estate. She was on Anna's will. Shocker. So maybe that's why she killed her. Now, this was a turning point because Gesche had mostly been killing off family victims or like fiancés or men she was about to marry or had just married. But now she had shifted to killing friends and any benefactor. So this was a shift. So Gesche's servant girl was the next victim. They think her name was Katharina. That's what some of the records say. But she was literally Gesche's servant. She fell sick while working for Gesche in her household. Turns out Gesche poisoned her. And the reason why was most likely because it was convenient. She didn't want any suspicious servants, because I'm guessing, servants saw everything. They heard everything, and I'm guessing this poor girl showed a little bit of suspicion, and so she was on the chopping block. So Johann Philipp Gottfried was the next person that she killed. He was her clerk and boarder, so he lived in Gesche's home, so he was renting from Gesche, and he fell sick while he was living with her. And it basically was she was gradually poisoning him. So instead of one of those sudden onset of illness and they died a few days later, it was like a really slow process for this victim. They think her motive for him dying was partially financial. He had a little bit of modest belongings. But part was opportunity. She just, he was there. He was in her care. And so she figured, why not? Let's just get rid of him. So no really solid motive on that other than, why not? Her next victim was Johann Christoph Meyer. That she killed him and Johann Gottfried in 1826, by the way. Now, Johann Christoph Meyer was just an acquaintance that she knew in Bremen. And he became ill after spending a little bit of time with Gesche. So just hanging out with her was a death sentence, apparently. and she poisoned his food, and they think she just had a personal beef with him and just decided, I don't want to deal with him anymore, so she killed him. And then Elise Meyer was another member of the Meyer family linked to Anna. So remember, Anna's her really good friend. She trusted Gesche to be her caregiver. Such a bad choice. But how would you know? Okay, I will say, if I saw someone who had so many people around them dying of illness and this person never got sick, I personally would be suspicious. But because I do all of these episodes about horrible humans, I am suspicious of everyone now. So to be fair, I'm a little biased because I think everyone could be a serial killer, but I feel like there's a red flag in there and no one noticed. But whatever, maybe that's just me. Continuing on, they think that she killed Elise for personal advantage and to prevent suspicion. Again, she didn't want people thinking that she had killed anyone, so she killed someone. And she also killed a lot of other neighbors and acquaintances in 1827. Among these acquaintances and neighbors were a lot of Bremen township people who dined at Gesche's. Not all names survived or their records survived in her trial, but there was a lot of suspicious deaths in those years that they tried her for. And usually it was people who had made Gesche an heir to some small part of their property or some kind of valuable. So, yeah, not smart to put this lady on your will. So, once she started, this lady could just not stop killing people. And like I said, all of these deaths were flying under the radar because everyone just assumed it was some kind of plague killing these people. But I still feel like there should have been red flags going off in everyone's head. Anyways, she never had clear motives for every single one of her killings. Sometimes it was to avoid abandonment. Other times, like I said, it was to inherit money or housing or anything. But many times it was just because Gesche was craving sympathy, attention, and control. Remember, Gesche growing up really, really, really liked being the center of attention. And I'm sure when she killed her first victim, she noticed she got a lot of sympathy and a lot of attention, and she loved it. So her methods were very cold and methodical, and she poisoned over days, sometimes weeks. She allowed her victims to recover slightly before resuming the dose. Like, this woman's sick. Like, she let her victims recover, feel better, and then started poisoning them again. It made her look more like a devoted, angelic caregiver because, they're getting better. Oh no, they're getting worse. Let me help you again. Like, this woman is so manipulative, so disgusting. Now, one man, a tenant named Michael Christoph, nearly survived. He began to recover after being away from Gesche's cooking. So he went away, so she couldn't be poisoning him. He started recovering, but then he returned to her care and immediately fell ill again and died. That pattern would later be what actually caught investigators' attention and started. That was the red flag for them. I don't know why all the other deaths around her weren't red flags, but finally they catch on because, people leave and they're fine and then they come back and they're suddenly ill again? Suspicious. But for years, no one suspected anything. In fact, people viewed her as cursed. I mean, we are in that time period where curses were pretty predominant. This is in Germany. And so people literally just were superstitious and believed that she must be super cursed. So they really truly believed that she was haunted by death, and she was constantly wearing black because she was always in mourning, because there was always someone who died around her. Now, in a society that respected silence, piety, and obedience in women, Geshe fit that mold perfectly. So everyone just absolutely thought she was a saint and a victim of circumstance until she made a mistake. In 1828, a man named Gesche Gottfried, her final intended victim, noticed something strange. After meals with Geshe, he constantly felt sick. One day, he absolutely refused to eat her food, and he didn't fall ill. He also noticed small granules of white powder in his food. Suspicious, he reported his concerns to the police. Finally, someone noticed a trend with this lady. Finally, someone got suspicious. So the authorities decided they needed to investigate a little bit further since, ding, 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 there were so many deaths tied to Geshe. So finally, they caught on, and what they found changed everything. So in Geshe's kitchen, they discovered mouse butter laced with arsenic. Under questioning, she cracked almost immediately. She confessed not just to one crime, but to 15 murders. That's right, 15 people. Her trial was in 1831, and it was a sensation. Crowds filled the courtroom. The public was in shock. How could this sweet-faced woman be a mass murderer? Because she is not what she seems. She claimed she acted under a kind of compulsion, saying, "It was as if a voice whispered to me, telling me to do it." The court was not sympathetic to that, so she was convicted and sentenced to death. On April 21st, 1831, Gesche Gottfried was led to the Domschau Square in Bremen. Over 35,000 people came to witness what would become the last public execution in the city. So she was the last person to be executed publicly in this city. She was beheaded by sword. She was very calm and composed to the end. A priest walked beside her. The crowd, once mourners of the angel, now saw their monster standing right in front of them. Now, the legacy of Gesche Gottfried is very complex and actually an eerie one. She remains one of Germany's most notorious female serial killers, and also one of the least understood. Some believe she suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a disorder where someone harms others to gain attention and sympathy. Kind of like, oh man, what is her name? The girl that killed her mother because her mother would always say she's sick and she needs a doctor, and took her to the doctor all the time and basically tortured her just to get attention. I don't remember. She's been in the news lately and I can't even remember her name. Anyways, they're thinking it's kind of a similar situation where she wanted to make other people sick so she would get all the attention and sympathy. Now, others argue that she was a sociopath using poison as a quiet tool of control in a society that gave women very few options to control their life. So I don't know where I fall on this one. I think she just really liked the attention, so I'm kind of leaning more to the Munchausen by proxy, but I don't know. You have to be some kind of sociopath to kill so many people, so maybe it's a healthy dose of both. Both of those things are influencing her. Anyways, her crimes sparked a lot of change. So her arrest prompted reforms in how food poisoning deaths were investigated. And after her execution, Bremen ended public executions permanently. Like I said, she was the last person to be executed in public. And as for myths, there's one that persists quite heavily, that Geshe whispered to the executioner just before the sword fell, something no one heard clearly. Some say it was a curse, others say it was a prayer. So there's just that story that she said something before she died. But no one really knows what it was. Was it a curse? Maybe. I doubt it. I don't think so because she's not a witch, but she was probably praying because she was about to die. I don't think she was cursing nobody. But what's certain is that her story really blurs the lines between victim and villain, between devotion and death. Because everyone thought she was this saint of a woman for taking care of all of these poor people as they were dying. But the only reason they died was because of her. So now that is our episode for the day. I know it's a little shorter than I normally do. Just having a new baby, guys, it's been a lot. So I'm sorry for the delay in all the episodes. Hopefully we'll get a little more consistent. My baby's starting to take consistent naps, so should be able to work on the scripts and everything while she's sleeping. But if you've enjoyed this episode about Gesche Gottfried, please make sure you are liking and subscribing. Make sure you turn on the notifications so you know when a new episode drops. And make sure you're sharing this with all your crime-loving friends. Anyone who likes these kind of spooky stories or just likes history or whatever, be sure you're sharing it with all those friends. And please, please, please tell me if there's anybody you want to hear about. I would love to talk about who you guys want to hear about. So either message me, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, or just message me on this actual episode. And I would love to do anyone you would like to talk about. So next week, we are actually going to be talking about, I'm actually really excited about this. This is exciting because our next episode is actually about a family of serial killers. That's right, an entire family of serial killers. They were known as the Bloody Benders. They were from Labette County, Kansas, and they killed their victims from May 1871, December 1872. You're going to have to tune in because this is a good one. So make sure you join us next week on Horrible Humans in History. Until then, we will see you guys later. Bye.